All right. In the previous lecture, we have discussed about the basics of the pipeline. In this lecture, we shall start with the instruction level part. So, in the previously, we have discussed that pipelining is a feature or the process that has been implemented to increase the processing speed of the processor or to carry out multiple instructions in a particular time frame. So multiple instruction can be carried out simultaneously by using pipelining. The basic concept of pipelining was explained by using uh, an analogy which was an example from your daily life. They took a laundry analogy in which there were 4 steps we followed in the laundry. And if those steps, we saw that those steps were carried out one at a time, we took longer time. Whereas when these steps were carried out in a pipeline structure, we saw that the time taken or time taken to complete the process was what decreased thoroughly. So it does not help with the latency, but it helped with the throughput. So we saw that what was latency and what was throughput. So let us today start with instruction level parallelism. When we implement pipelining structure in instruction and on processor level, that concept becomes instruction level parallelism. So instruction level parallelism is being used by processors since all the processors in 1985 using pipeline, and to improve the performance by overlapping the execution of instruction is instruction level. So instruction level parallelism is just the process that we saw in the previous lecture as an example, the laundry process. So instructions are carried out in a similar fashion. Then that's the concept of known as instruction level parallelism. So instructions, when evaluated in parallel, is ILP. There are various techniques that exploit the concept of ILP. We have basically categorized them into 2 categories broadly. One is the dynamic system or hardware-based methods or techniques to exploit ILP. Other one is static and software-based methods to exploit ILP. So, what are hardware-based techniques and what are software-based techniques? Let us have an insight of these 2 technical processes. When your processor is designed in such a way that the hardware of the processor is complex, and it deals with the various constraints that has to be handled in a pipelining structure. Then, because those processes which are being held by the which are being handled by the hardware, they are being handled by the program. Execution is in process. So the hardware takes a decision that which instruction has to be stalled and which instruction has to be bypassed. So suppose if we have 2 instructions in the sequence to be carried out in the sequence, the first instruction, when first instruction is carried out, it gives some value to a variable, and that variable value has to be used by the next instruction to be carried out. So in this process, while the program is under execution, if the first instruction is taking is a long process. If it takes more cycles to execute, then the second instruction has to wait for the first instruction to update the value of the variable. So this waiting process of the second instruction is known as stalling. And the first instruction, because it has dependency on the first instruction to supply a value which has to be used by the second instruction. Whereas a third instruction and fourth instruction might not have any dependencies on the first instruction, second instruction, so they will pass. They will be allowed to pass. When all these decisions are taken by hardware, while the program execution is in process, they are known as, this process is known as dynamic techniques. These processes are known as dynamic techniques to exploit ILP. Whereas if these decisions are being made by the compiler itself, in this case, the hardware will play the complete role of decision making, whereas in software-based process, compiler will be the major role player or the major protagonist. So compiler, because compiler is handling the decision making, it is making the bunches of the programs which has to be forwarded to, or which instruction has to be stalled, which instruction has to be carried out. So in this case, if the compiler is handling these processes, so this process is known as software-based or static ILP. So examples are which applications we can see that the dynamic ILP techniques dominates the desktop and server markets, whereas the static ILPs dominates embedded. Let us switch over to the next slide. So this is just a brief overview of the techniques. We will see them in detail in the next subsequent slides. Uh, so these are the limitations. There are some limitations which are being imposed by ILPs for the conduction of parallelism. So what are ILP limitations? We can see that parallelism that can be exploited among the instructions. Pipelining CPI, we have ideal CPI, and it stalls for structural data and control hazards. What are hazards? Hazards are the constraints which we were talking about right now. Hazards are the constraints or the dependencies. As we saw in this case, in this example, first instruction and second instruction. The second instruction is dependent upon the value of the variable provided by the first instruction. So this is a dependency. This dependency will cause the stalling of the second instruction. And this stalling process of the second instruction is considered as a hazard in the pipelining system. So the pipelining system, if I need to calculate the overall CPI of the pipelining system, we write it as what is CPI? CPI is cycles per instruction. So it is one of the aspects of the process's performance. The CPI is average number of clock cycles per instruction for a program or program segment. It is a multiplicative inverse of the instructions per cycle. So multiplicative inverse of the instruction per cycle. What we need that more number of instructions must be carried out in a single cycle of the system, of the processor system. So CPI is a measure of, or we can say, is a multiplicative inverse of the instructions per cycle. So the lower the value of the CPI, the more will be the improve the performance of the processor. So for an ideal CPI, the value of ideal CPI is equal to 1, you can say. The pipelining CPI, then pipeline CPI will be defined as pipeline CPI will be ideal CPI plus any stalls that has to be taken care by the processes which we mentioned previously. There are two processes, two techniques, dynamic and static. So stalls, whether they are structural, data and control, there are three types of hazards we will see through stalls. So stalls handled by various techniques plus ideal CPI will give you the CPI of the pipeline. So in order to improve the performance or to decrease the CPI, we must reduce all the three hazards, that is the data, structure, and control, which reduces the ideal CPI. So let us see what are the techniques implemented and what are its effects. So advanced pipelining techniques, as you can see. First technique is forwarding and bypassing. This reduces potential data hazard stalls. Then we have delayed branches and simple branch scheduling, which is also known as branch prediction. This reduces control hazard stalls, dynamic scheduling with forwarding. This is a raw stall. Raw stall is nothing but it's a read after write stalls. And read after write stalls is part of data hazards. So data hazards are handled by using a new algorithm that will be to master those algorithms. Then we have dynamic scheduling with the register period. So register renaming and also WAR and WAR more is uh, right after read and right after write stop. There are two stops. Then we have again branch protection. Branch protection reduces control hazard stops. Issuing multiple instructions per cycle is the ideal CPI. Then hardware speculation is the data and control. Dynamic memory disambiguation, that is data hazard stall. Loop unrolling, important part is the control hazard stall. Basic compiler pipeline scheduling, data hazard. Compiler dependence, data hazard. They all are part of the data hazards and controllers. So hardware support for compiler speculation is part of data as well as control stalls. So let us start with the basic building blocks of IP. Basic building blocks and desire. So what is a basic building block? A basic building block is a code segment with no branches in and out of it. So basic building block, if we are going for a conditional statement. So conditional statement is made by using uh, some instruction sets which have to be carried out in sequence. Suppose if we are going for a loop or a conditional statement, if so, it has 4 instructions or 5 instructions in the sequence, which will be carried out in loop and again. So with the part which is being carried out in loop or condition again and again, with iterations, that part is known as referred as basic block set. So basic block set is nothing but a code statement which handles conditional statement or a loop. So ILP within a basic block is limited. We have suppose we need ways to parallelize execution across multiple blocks. So how ILP is being implemented that we use. So one of the methods that is loop level parallelism. So loop level parallelism is to perform multiple loop iterations in parallel. So multiple loop iterations can be done. Loop level parallelism is a form of parallelism in software programming that is concerned with extracting parallel tasks from loop. So as we can see that the example is it is referring it's a for loop. So for loop is the case that I equals to 1, I less than 1000, this iteration has to be carried out 1000 times. This will be repeated 1000 times and this value will be updated by 1000. So you all are familiar with the concepts of how a loop is carried out. So loop level parallelism is nothing but it is carried out in loops. So ILP is possible by loop unrolling. How ILP is implemented? ILP is implemented by using statically by compiler and dynamically by hardware. Because in case of dynamic process, hardware is making decisions. In case of static process, compiler is making decisions. So we just implement a basic. Suppose this is the bunch of instructions. These are the bunch of instructions that has to be carried out. That is carrying out a loop system for ILP. So how this is implemented? This is implemented if these are 6 statements. Suppose if these are 6 statements, and I have to carry out this loop for 1000 iterations. So how do we carry out these loop level parallelism? We just carry out this 6 instruction in the loop, and then we have a loop which carries out these instructions for 6 if divided by 1000 divided by 6 we have 96 instructions, sorry 16. this uh, loop this loop will be carried out for 16 times. So this for instruction, above one for instruction will be carried out for 16 times, and then 96 instructions will be carried out in the sequence. So a loop level parallelism is done by loop unrolling, just to increase the speed of and to reduce the cycles of the process. It is done by compiler and done by hardware. When done by compiler, it is static, then by hardware, it is And this kind of processor compiling pattern leads to vector operations, early vector based supercomputers applied on this technique. So supercomputer, early vector based supercomputers is used to this LLP, loop level parallel. So as we talked about, we had a certain dependencies or hazards. What are those? What were those hazards? Those hazards were due to dependencies. So in case of loop level parallelism, the opportunity for LLP often arises in computing programs where data is stored in random access data stores. Such parallelism provides a speed up to overall execution time on the program, typically in line with Amdahl's law. So there is something called Amdahl's law. And what is Amdahl's law? Amdahl's law is a formula used to find the maximum improvement possible by a particular part of a system. In parallel computing, Amdahl's law is mainly used to predict the theoretical maximum speed of program processing using multiple processes. The program processing for multiple processes can be carried out by implementing Amdahl's law. So there are certain dependencies which has to be sorted out, or which has to be handled in case of dealing with the in case of dealing with and implementing INPs, dealing with hazards and implementing INPs. So dependencies are nothing but it is a way in which the one instruction depends upon the other. The dependencies are the property of the program, whether a given dependence results in an actual hazard or whether that hazard actually processes stop are properties of the pipeline. So in the broad sense, we can classify dependencies into three categories. One is data dependence, one is name dependence, and then we have control dependence. So dependencies and hazards. The presence of dependencies indicates the potential for hazard, or we have talked actual hazards and length of any stall is a property of the cycle. So actual hazard, basically actual hazard or a true hazard is known as data hazard. Data hazard is the part which is actual hazard of true hazard. Since dependence can limit INP, obviously dependence can limit INP, as we have seen. So for example of first instruction and second instruction. If the second instruction is dependent upon the value of the variable to be updated by the execution of the first instruction, then this second instruction has dependent upon the first instruction, dependence upon the first instruction. And this kind of dependence is known as data dependence. It needs data from the first instruction. So the second instruction cannot be executed until the first instruction provides that data. So this is hazard, and this dependence limits the limits INP, execution of the second instruction in parallel with the first instruction. So goal is to overcome these dependencies. These dependencies has to be overcome, and there are various techniques to be followed to overcome these dependencies. To maintain the dependencies but avoid the others. So how this is being done? We have to maintain the dependencies. Obviously, the value has to be updated. Then only the second instruction can be carried out. So we need to avoid the hazard but maintain the dependency. Then eliminate the dependency by transforming the code. So we see or the compiler or the hardware, whatever be the process, whether it is static or the dynamic. If it is a dynamic process, then this part is done by the compiler, hardware itself. If it is a process which is a static, this part is done by the compiler. So it figures out which part or what are the changes has to be made in the particular program that these instructions can be carried out in parallel, or they take much lesser time to execute. So there is a process called scheduling of the code. So scheduling the code is primary method, that is to avoid hazard without altering the dependency. So we schedule the codes. Let's see how we schedule them. So let us see what is a data dependence. Discuss data dependence. So data dependence, it is a recursive. It has a recursive definition. that instruction B is data dependent on instruction A, and this condition is an if condition, if and only if. B uses a data result produced by the instruction A, or there is another instruction C such that the data is being dependent on C and C is data dependent on. So either B is depending upon some value from it, either B is depending upon some value from C, which further depends upon some value from it. So they all depend upon each other. And then the potential for a raw hazard is found in this particular program or process. So raw hazard is read after write. So suppose we have an example of a load. We see that a load process in this the F0 is being loaded with a 0 R1. Then add F4, F0 and F2, and this has to be loaded. This has to be stored in F4. Then SD store F4 to R1, then subtract R1. This is a loop process. R1 is decremented by 8. 8 has to be decremented 8 times. If it is not 0, then if not equal to 0, then again go to the loop and to carry out the process. So this value depends upon app not to execute. So until the app not is not updated, this addition operation cannot be performed. And if this addition operation cannot be performed, then F4 will not be updated. And this store operation cannot be performed. So this kind of operation, it has to read before it can write. So read after write. So this R1 will write in F0, and this the value of F0 will be read by the next instruction. So next instruction, if this F0 is not updated, if the value of the F0 is not updated, this add will read the false value of the F0 and will result and will execute the next instruction, and the result will be undesirable. So this kind of hazard is known as raw. That is a read after write hazard. So a data value may flow between the instructions to the register of detecting dependencies for data in registers is easy. So we will see how this is done. Then the presence of dependence has a potential for hazard, as we all know. So the next part is we say that it's a name dependence or a structural dependence also. So it is known as structural dependence. This is sometimes called the defect of the hardware. So occurs when two instructions both access the same data storage location but are not data dependent. So two instructions which are not data dependent but try to access the same address location. At this point, we can see that A and B are trying to access at the same time. They are trying to access the same address. So there are two subtypes. Anti-dependence, A reads, then B writes. So A reads a particular part, and then B has to write it. So potential for write after read hazard. Output dependence is A writes and B also writes. They both try to write the same memory location. So this has the potential for a read after write after write hazard. So name dependencies can be avoided by changing the instruction location. These are name dependencies since no value is involved as opposed to the category. So names can be changed and this hazard can be overcome. So these are not considered as a true dependence value because there is no data involved. Because the process is not a data dependent process, and hence they are also sometimes referred as false data dependent. So the name changes, the location to write can be changed. So there are types of data hazards, three types of data hazards. So as you can see, we consider, suppose let us consider that we have an I instruction, which is an earlier instruction in the program. J instruction, which is the later one to be done. So this example is a potential example for to discuss a raw hazard. So let us see how it can be done. As a raw hazard is a read after write. So read after write, if it is considered. So J tries to read a value before I writes it. So as we have said that in this process, if suppose if this load process takes more time. So if this load process takes more time, F naught is not updated to the value provided by this resistor. So if F naught is not updated and if this instruction is carried out in parallel with respect to this instruction, then it will try to read the F naught, but before it has not been, it will try to read the F naught before it has not been written. So this is a kind of dependency where raw read after write, when J tries to read a value before I writes it. So it has not been written by the previous instruction, but the next instruction is trying to read it because both the instructions are being carried out in the parallel. So this kind of hazard is an example of a data hazard, which is raw. So this has data dependency. J has data dependency upon I and cannot be carried out. Let us see what is write after write. If I and J write to the same place but in the wrong order. If I and J are writing to the same place. In this example, if we say that A was the first instruction to write to this memory location. Has to be, was supposed to be the first instruction to write to this memory location. And the B has to be the second instruction to write to this memory location. So in case of write after write, I and J write to the same place but in the wrong one. So what if B writes before A? The instruction is being carried out in the C in the parallel. Both A and B are being carried out in the parallel. A takes more cycles to execute than B. So B completing its instruction first will try to write to this memory location. But the program execution was meant for the A to write first and that particular memory location, then it has to be followed by B. So if this sequence is reversed or somehow changed, this kind of dependence or hazard is known as write after write. Write after write hazard only occurs if greater than one pipeline stage can write not. So in order, if more than one pipeline stages can write to some memory location, then this kind of data hazard is absent. Then we have a WAR, write after read. If a J writes a new value to a location before I has read the old one. So this is also a process. In this case, if J writes, so B, so here B is the J. So J writes to a value before A has read the previous one. So A was not able to read the previous value and B changed that value in that time sense. So this kind of hazard is known as write after read hazard. So it only occurs if the writes can happen before reads in pipeline. So you can see. So next is a control dependence. So these were data dependence or data hazards. If two try to access the memory, two instructions try to access the same location, refers to as structural dependence or data name dependence. Then we have data dependence. Data dependence has three hazards: raw, wow, and for. Next is a control dependence. So control dependence occurs when the execution of an instruction depends on the outcome of the earlier conditional branch instruction. So it depends upon the outcome of an earlier conditional branch instruction. So this decision has to be made about the control, which instruction has to be carried out. So we can see that it's not easy to find the branch instruction depends on without running the program. So control dependency is resolved by executing instruction in a program order and detecting the branch hazards is not executing a dependent instruction before the outcome. So this sets a stage for the technique which is known as branch protection. So branch protection is the technique which handles control dependence. So there are various techniques we will see. What is handling data hazard? To handle data hazard, we have dynamic stereo, etc. So we will see that what is Thomas-Ull's algorithm and how it handles the dependencies. So name dependencies, data dependencies, and we have control dependencies. So what are compiler techniques for the ILP to handle these dependencies, and what are the hardware techniques to handle these dependencies? We will see in the next slide. So these were the examples or a brief introduction about the ILPs. Please go through the notes for the instruction level algorithm in detail that have been provided to you. Go through them and go through some examples of dependencies so you will have a clear insight what are the meanings of these dependencies for the data and how hazards are included. This is control dependency. So we can see that in the next lecture we will discuss about the compiler techniques of ILP, how these dependencies are rectified or how these dependencies are handled. See, dependencies cannot be rectified. If a particular instruction is data dependent upon the previous instruction, so it is dependent. We have to handle these dependencies. So sometimes these dependencies are handled by hardware, sometimes these are handled by compiler. So on the basis of which part is handling it, it has been classified into two categories. One is static, other is dynamic. So this is all for today. Uh, if you have any queries, you know where to fill. Just write from Google Classroom. And the audience. Thank you very much. Stop.